In this week's 1% Weekly, I take issue with Simon Sinek's solution to the millennial problem. Nick Raddle tells us about life inside Elite Investor Club, and I look at the latest witch hunt from our friends at HMRC. They called it the interview that broke the internet. I think it's already up to 5.5 million views, which is slightly more than we're used to on 1% Weekly. And I'm talking, of course, about Simon Sinek, the guy who wrote Start With Why, and his thoughts on the millennial generation. Now, I loved 3/4 of this video because he reinforced all of the things I've noticed from just being around millennials, certainly from employing millennials, and I've had quite a bit of criticism about my thoughts on millennials. So, I'm often positioned as kind of some old fogey who, of course, is completely out of touch with reality. But when somebody is young and cool and down with the kids, as Simon Sinek says all this, everyone says he's a genius, and this is the most amazing analysis they've ever seen. So I'm very pleased to go through the first part of this, and you can see the link to the whole video underneath in the description panel. But what he says is there are 4 main issues that he sees with the millennial generation. The first is parenting, and he talks about failed parenting strategies.
Not my words.
I'll say that again because I think it's something that's so close to my heart and my experience. Failed parenting strategies. Treating them like gods and goddesses, telling them they're amazing from the second they come out the womb, going and fighting their corner to get them into the higher streams of their classes or whatever, telling them that they can have anything they want in life because they're so special, has not done them any favors. When they get into the real world and they find out that actually you can't have anything you want, you've actually got to work for it, you've got to progress and grow in your knowledge and your experience and your career. You don't get a medal just for taking part, you only get medals if you win stuff. Their self-esteem is absolutely shattered and the little darlings don't know how to cope with it. So parenting has been, for me, probably the single biggest issue. The second one, of course, is technology. They've come through from a generation that's been living on social media and Facebook and living an amazing life seemingly, where you can set up this picture of yourself. Here I am in some great place, here I am in a restaurant, here's the meal I'm about to eat, yawn. And on and on it goes, saying what an amazing life I'm living compared to that life that you've got because I'm so amazing. The reality is, I'm on antidepressants, I've got no friends, and I have that occasional trauma if somebody unfriends me online. So technology has played an important part. And what we're seeing here is, how much they just want for and long for getting a text or an email or a WhatsApp from their friends. It's a release of dopamine, the same chemical that you get if you go drinking or smoking or gambling. And we have age restrictions on all of those things, and yet we have no age restrictions on Facebook or other social media or texting or anything else. So, we've got them hooked on the buzz and the instant gratification of technology, and that's starting to impact their attitude to everything else in life. And that leads on to his third point of impatience. When you can get everything instantly and Amazon will deliver it tomorrow, you start to think that the whole of life is like that. I've often commented on the casual attitude that these people have towards relationships. And of course, as Simon Sinek says, you just swipe right if you want a new girlfriend or boyfriend.
Swipe right, bang, I'm a stud!
You don't have to actually develop the social skills to ask somebody out and risk rejection when you do so. You've also got the idea that somehow they want to make an impact in the world, and yet they don't want to put in the long slog that's needed to develop the skills to make an impact. They often hop from job to job. I mean, some of the CVs I've seen, you wouldn't believe. Every few months they're off somewhere else in search of something cooler or something where they can make a difference and make an impact. The reality is, think back to the 10,000 hours that go into learning any significant skill, the years of experience. I was speaking to Nick Rathel in one of our earlier interviews. I've spent 15 years just developing my copywriting skills. I've invested over £100,000 in training and consulting and coaching on those skills. And I still think I'm above the nursery slopes, but I certainly wouldn't put myself in the category of a worldwide expert on it. And that's after 15 years of conscious study. So, they just want everything to happen too easily and too quickly. Now, the fourth category that he comes up with is environment. And we take these poor little snowflakes and we put them into a corporate environment where they actually have to compete, where not everything's done for them, where the companies are more concerned with this year's revenue and profits than with the kind of lifelong ambitions of these millennials. And that's when they come unstuck. Now, right the way up to now, I've kind of agreed with Simon. I think his analysis is really on the money. And I think there's no getting away from it. Where I have a problem is with his solution. He is saying it is business's problem, you and I who own businesses and employ people, to fix the results of the failed parenting, the impact of technology, and the impatience they've grown up with through instant gratification.
So we're getting them in our companies, and we now have to pick up the slack. We have to work extra hard to figure out the ways that we build their confidence. We have to work extra hard to find ways to teach them the social skills that they're missing out on.
So we now have to become psychiatrists, social workers, counselors, and have the patience of Job to take this product we've been delivered, this millennial product, and turn it into a useful member of business life. That means, once again, we have an unpaid cost onto business. We do all the work for the government, collecting their taxes and so on. We create the jobs in the economy. We build the wealth. Now we've got to turn around a whole generation and make them useful members of society without any reward, without any reduction in our tax bills or the other burdens we carry on behalf of the state. So thanks a lot for that suggestion, Simon. I would like to make a two-word response to it, but I obviously can't do that. I think we need a somewhat more thought through and constructive solution than simply, we've created this rubbish generation, it's down to you in business to sort it all out. I'm afraid life ain't that simple, Simon. Nice idea, but I think you need to go back to the drawing board and start with asking why. For our final chat with Nick Rathel, let's find out what the Elite Investor Club has meant to him. So Nick, I can't let you go without talking a bit about your membership of and your involvement with Elite Investor Club. What made you first decide to get involved with the club?
Well, I think it's like all business transactions, Graham. It's trusting the person or the people in charge who are actually running it. It's that person-to-person connection, whether it's direct mail or business in general. I met you many years ago when at a J. Abraham seminar, and then you went on to become a client of mine. We rather lost touch in the intervening period, but a couple of years ago, I thought, oh, let's look up Graham. I was moving house to Devon, and as you do when you go through materials, I thought, oh, let's see what Graham's up to. And lo and behold, there was the Elite Investor Club, and as luck would have it, there was an event the following week. So I paid the very modest fee to attend. It was a great evening, and that's how I got back in touch with you and found out more about EIC.
Okay, great. So you've had a chance since then, obviously, to see what we do across a number of events and all the various things that we get up to.
Yes.
What would you say you've found to be the most useful stuff that we've done from your perspective since you joined the club?
I would say I'm a great lover of art, so I'm certainly looking to get more involved in what Aidan Mellor is doing with the art club. Mm-hmm. But on a more general level, what I like about EIC is it's not sort of in-your-face, foot-in-the-door sales, which certain other similar type investment clubs offer to you. They're too aggressive. whereas you let us come to your events, you've got a lot on offer, and it's done in a very relaxed, educational but informative and fun way. And that's what I really like about it, as well as the people you meet there.
Yeah, because I was going to say, one of the things that I think is possibly either underestimated or underused by members is the networking side of it. That because I always say to people that, those of us who take a serious interest in our financial future,
Yes.
or even just those of us who run businesses, are viewed as a little bit weird by the rest of society.
Very much, more than just a little bit, yes.
So it's quite nice to get together with a bunch of similar misfits and spend some time. I mean, have you found that to be a particularly helpful
Very
part?
much so, Graham. You took the words right out of my mouth, because I think if I put it a little more strongly than you, the people like us, our kind of people, are very much under attack. I saw at my parents' house yesterday evening a programme on television where they were at Heathrow Airport and they were going through security checks, and I thought, is it for drugs or bombs or terrorist things? But no, the heinous crime that they were trying to prevent was people carrying more than £1,000 in cash, which must make them Pablo Escobar drug dealers at least and Al-Qaeda terrorists at worst. You see this in the press. Any criminal who's arrested, for some reason, they put the value of their house as if that had anything to do with anything. And we have a very schizophrenic approach in the UK. It may be different if you come from another country, to money, where a lottery winner or Big Brother winner, good on you, mate, you've won 10 million. But if someone is self-sacrificing and spends their whole life working hard to provide for their families in an unostentatious way, not being a big head, just quietly getting on with it, they're excoriated in the press. Who do they think they are? They must have done something crooked. But the sort of people I've interacted, are not like that at all. No, they're hardworking, the millionaire to be, or in the future, or now next door, like the Thomas Stanley book. They just want to, safeguard their property and their wealth for themselves and their families, and that is something I subscribe to with every fibre of my being.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's always interesting to me is that everyone's got that sort of a unique backstory, and I love to learn how they've done it. And quite a few have come from modest beginnings and ended up with significant sort of asset base, usually through a combination of business and property investment or something like that.
Yes.
So I think the other side that fascinates me is that even when they have been successful, there are still areas where they actually need some help, and that's where I've been really pleasantly surprised, but also, somewhat taken aback by the extent to which the tax planning side of what we do has been well received.
Yes.
Because even people who've been successful, they're not necessarily getting great advice from their current team. So we're trying to go a little bit broader and a little bit deeper to help the kind of people that are part of the club.
Oh, very much so.
And I guess you've probably seen some of the events you've been to recently.
Oh, absolutely. And to take your point about having good advice, when you start in any business, there's a steep learning curve, but you've never made it in inverted commas. You always have to keep learning and be open to new ideas. And whilst your accountant from the local Chamber of Commerce may have served you well on your journey upwards, they're going to be staying at the 19th hole of the golf club. You need people who deal, you're dealing, say, at the £100 or the 100,000 level. If you're getting above that, you need it's a whole different ball game, as our American cousins say, and you need that expert advice, because it's not just about making money, it's keeping it and accumulating it once you've got it. And that's something I see with a lot of my wealthy clients.
Okay. What about, obviously one of the things we try and do, you mentioned financial education, we try and create lots of content in different forms, the video, the magazine, the webinars and so on. Which of those do you find the most useful, and which do you kind of perhaps not get around to consuming as a member yourself?
Well, my two favourite ones, and of course everyone is different, are the magazine, which is definite bedtime reading, although it keeps me awake rather than sends to sleep, which is very positive. And also what I particularly love are the 1% weekly videos, because I think I mentioned about the negative media stereotypes about people who are wealthy, and that goes into Hollywood as well. Instead of listening to negative things like the extremely left-wing BBC, why not have, say, Graham's 1% Weekly on in the background, and you're getting educated with positive things? And that's a philosophy of mine that covers all areas of my life. Fill your mind with positive life-enhancing tools to make things better in all areas of your life, and that's a good way to start.
I guess I have one advantage over the BBC in that you have a computer, but you don't have a television in your home.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
So
that's
that
true.
puts me one up to start with. Yeah. Okay. So finally, what would be your advice to anyone that's watching the channel here but has not yet actually joined the club?
Well, I mentioned 1% Weekly. I think that's a good place to start, and give you a gentle introduction and toe into the water of what can be offered. And there's plenty on offer at the EIC. Also to go along to events which are held every couple of months in London and more worldwide now, I believe, but obviously you know more than I do. I tend to go to the London ones and mingle with the people, get to know them, and see what their aspirations are, and you might even do some business, but there's no pressure on you to do it. I've actually met someone who's turned into a large client, which is great. But again, I think that's due to the atmosphere of non-pitching and just education and information with a dash of fun, which is what I really like. So my advice would be videos first, and then go along to an event and see what it's all about.
And it's going to be interesting, actually. You mentioned other countries. I mean, we've had a team in Singapore for some years now. But this year we're also launching in Zurich and in Mumbai. So
yes.
It'll be interesting to see as we get into these different countries, whether people have the same kind of characteristics that we've seen so far. Because we certainly see a lot of similarities between the mindset of people in Britain and Singapore.
Yes.
And we actually have people in about 10 or 12 countries in between, but this is the first time we'll actually have a base in Switzerland and a base in India as well, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And as I mentioned when I was talking about living abroad, people do have differences, but deep down I think we're all the same. The mother who, when her children are in front of a camera, will brush down the jumper or straighten the shirt and tie. So as I said, we are different, but we do have the same beliefs, feelings and desires, even if they're expressed in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and I think as the world shrinks, I think this group of us who are really interested in securing our financial future will potentially turn into a genuine global club, and that's kind of my vision for the next few years.
Oh, very much so. And just a final point I remember from Alan Clark's diaries, of all people, he was talking about, or they were talking about some financial crisis in the mid-80s, and he said, well, look at Brazil, it's 1,000,000% inflation, a bit like Venezuela now, but people still go out and party and enjoy themselves at the beach. And I think that's the overriding message. Come what may in the world, and goodness knows there's plenty coming down the pike, in all senses, particularly if Comrade Corbyn gets elected. You need to have that flexibility of mind and openness to learn new things, as Dr. W.G. Hill put it rather crudely, protect your ass and your assets. So I think that in a politer form, I think that's the overriding message of what EIC offers, or at least I think so.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go and have a lie down now that you mentioned the C word. But apart from that, Nick Rowell, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you're watching this and you're not yet a member of the Investor Club, just click the link in the description below, fill in the form on that page, and it'll be great to welcome you along as well. If there's one thing that I find completely unacceptable in a supposedly civilized Western democracy, it's retrospective legislation. The idea that something that was legal at some point in the past can be suddenly declared illegal today, and the people who were doing this legal thing at the time suddenly become effectively criminals. That's what's happening today as HMRC turns the clock back to 1999. And no, we're not going to be starting to play Prince records and partying about this one. They are going after something called employee benefit trusts. And these were quite common in the 1990s and 2000s, where they were set up as a means of effectively rewarding and remunerating employees, whether a bonus being put into an offshore trust, and then a loan was made to the employee with the view that that loan may not have to be repaid in the future. First of all, what happened was there was a new piece of legislation in 2011 that said going forward that was not going to be allowed. This was going to be treated effectively as taxable income, so there'd be income tax and NIC to pay on these loans from an employee benefit trust. Now, fair enough, you might say, that's just a loophole being closed. But what they've now done is to say that any loans that were made going all the way back from 2011 to 1999 have to come into the legislation, and any tax that may have been due on these things nearly 20 years ago has got to be paid today. And I find this quite incredible that we can allow this to happen. And of course, it's only going to impact high earners typically, and therefore you won't get the man in the street complaining about this. We shan't see any marches on Westminster, but it is still a most incredibly unfair piece of legislation. So there are two issues that really come out of this appalling approach that HMRC is taking. The first is, what about the employee who's in receipt of the loans? But the other is, what about the company that set up the employee benefit trust? So as an employee, basically they're saying you've either got to have repaid those loans in full or paid the tax and national insurance that's due on them as if they had been income. So you could face a massive retrospective tax bill. What will commonly be the case is that those employees are no longer working for the companies that may have set these things up way back in the 1990s, in which case, of course, you'll be pleased to know the company will assume this liability and they will have to find some way of reaching a settlement with HMRC. HMRC has actually been taking legal action against companies even before this latest legislation came into play. So many companies are already mired in a legal process, and one of their options is obviously just to wait and see how that legal process unfolds and what the outcome is. Another is to try and reach a negotiated settlement with HMRC, though there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that could be a costly and expensive process in itself, or just to pursue appeals on a case-by-case basis. So it's unlikely there are going to be any winners from this. It's going to be a sudden, unexpected, unplanned expense for the company and also potentially for the employee. Obviously, it doesn't matter whether you agree with this or not in terms of employee benefit trusts and the way they were used. The point is, it was legal at the time. People used what was a legal structure. It was then declared not just illegal going forward, but illegal all the way back to 1999. And therefore, please pay us now as if that structure had never existed. I find it incredible that this sort of thing can be applied retroactively. Just how broadly shall we take this? Shall we say that the rate of income tax should have been 75% for the last 20 years? So let's ask everyone to cough up the difference between whatever they paid and 75%. Where does this end? What is the point of having Parliament and a voting system and a legislative system where these things get agreed if they can suddenly be unagreed 10 or 20 years later, and everyone that thought they were following a legal process is now effectively in breach of the law and is suddenly going to face either a massive tax bill or presumably, if they can't or won't pay, they'll go to jail. It's outrageous. They should be rioting on the streets about this, and yet HMRC and the politicians pulling their strings get away with it time and time again. These changes apply to employee benefit trusts, employer financial retirement benefit schemes, contractor loan schemes, and some other disguised remuneration agreements. So there could be several ways in which you might be caught in this trap. If so, you need to get some very strong tax advice and legal advice, because the impact of something like this, going back all the way to 1999, could frankly be fatal for your business. Thanks for watching 1% Weekly. If you like what you see, why not subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the bell so you get notified every time we broadcast a new program. Or if you just want to watch another video, how about this one? Are you going to make a choice then? Because I can't sort of stay here all day. I'm getting my hands are getting tired. So in your own time,